At my own son's wedding, I wasn't seated near the altar. I wasn't in the front row. I wasn't even in the room. I was in the kitchen, beside the trash, next to a stack of dirty dishes, because my new daughter-in-law said I didn't match the aesthetic. I smiled. I said nothing. Then I walked out, sold the house I helped them buy, and left them with a debt they'll never crawl out of. This isn't a story of revenge. This is a story of a mother who finally chose H herself. They say weddings are a celebration of family, of legacy, of love carried across generations. They say a mother glows with pride on her child's big day. I thought I would too. I thought after 34 years of late nights, soccer games, school forms, scraped knees, and college applications, I'd earned a front row seat to my son's joy. I thought I would be there, not just in the room, but in the story, smiling beside him, included, thanked. But instead, I was handed a linen napkin and pointed to a folding chair by the utility sink in the venue's staff kitchen. The chair wobbled. The floor smelled like bleach and meat drippings, and I sat like they expected me to. The girl who escorted me back there couldn't have been more than 20. Nervous, thin arms, clipboard clutched like a shield. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Kellerman," she said, eyes darting toward the swinging doors. "The bride." Well, she said this was temporary, just while the photographers finished setting up. I nodded, silent. I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand an explanation. Because when you've spent your whole life absorbing discomfort for the sake of others, silence becomes second nature. I sat down, crossed my ankles neatly, and folded my hands in my lap. My dress, soft, dove-gray silk, creased at the knees. My heels pinched. I had my hair set in rollers that morning. Sat under the dryer with women half my age talking about honeymoons and baby showers. I had imagined the moment I'd see my son at the altar, his face lighting up, our eyes meeting across the aisle, and him giving me that little half-smile he always gave when he was nervous. But he never looked back. Not once. From the kitchen, I could hear the music swell, strings, something classical, the kind of music that floats, elegant and weightless. I caught a glimpse of the procession reflected in the glass of a refrigerator door. Her family lined the aisle, her mother dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her father standing tall like he'd built the foundation of this whole day himself. But it was me. It had always been me. I had signed the checks. Everyone. I had sat with the realtor for hours on Zoom to find them that perfect starter home. Overpriced, overhyped, but so on brand, as she liked to say. I had paid the down payment. I had given them a gift that would take me a decade to recover from because my son had said it would mean everything to us, Mom. Everything. And yet, here I was, everything apparently, being a chair next to a trash bin that smelled like old seafood. No name card, no greeting, no thank you. The catering manager came through at one point. Older man, kind eyes. He stopped when he saw me. "You're, not a guest?" "I'm the mother of the groom," I said softly. He blinked. "Of course you are." His voice dropped, quiet now, almost embarrassed. "I'll find you something better." But I waved him off. Not because I didn't want better, but because I needed a moment to sit in that chair and take in the weight of what had just happened. I needed to feel it fully. The sting, the dismissal, the deliberate exclusion. Because it was deliberate. I knew it then. Just like I'd known it the week before when she'd asked me not to wear navy because it might clash with the family photos. Just like I'd known it when my son told me, "Emily's parents are hosting the rehearsal dinner, so maybe just hang back that night." Like I was a distant cousin, an extra. Not the woman who had raised him through layoffs and chemo and a divorce so ugly I'd forgotten how to smile for real. The music faded. Applause rang out. The door swung open wide enough for me to see them walk back down the aisle, his hand on hers, her bouquet lifted high like a prize. Cameras flashing, laughter, confetti. I stood slowly, knees aching, spine stiff, and pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I looked around the kitchen. Stainless steel counters, industrial oven, trays of untouched hors d'oeuvres. A staffer dumped a pile of cocktail napkins into a bin and turned the faucet on full blast, drowning out the sound of the music just enough that I could finally breathe. They didn't want me in the picture. Not today. Maybe not ever. So I decided right then I'd stop acting like I still needed their permission to exist. I smoothed my dress, checked my lipstick in the reflection of a microwave door, and reached for my phone. This story was only just beginning. I remember the day we toured the house. Late spring, trees just starting to unfurl that electric green that makes you believe in second chances. Emily was in the back seat chattering about double vanities and open-concept kitchens. My son, Michael, drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on her thigh like it was muscle memory. He looked back at me in the rear view once, grinned. "You're gonna love this one, Mom. It's perfect." And it was, for them. Vaulted ceilings, granite countertops, French doors that opened onto a postage stamp yard with just enough space for future playdates, she'd said with a knowing smile. I asked about the mortgage, about the taxes, about the inspection report, and Emily's lips tightened each time. "It's fine," she said eventually. "We're not asking you to buy it, just to help a little." A little. That little turned into $35,000. My retirement cushion. The money I'd set aside for emergencies, for travel, maybe even for something selfish for once. A writing class, a garden, a dog that sheds too much. But I signed the check. I wrote "gift" on the memo line with my favorite pen. Michael squeezed my hand. "We'll pay you back," he said. "It's temporary." I never asked for repayment. Not really. I asked for respect, for acknowledgement, for space at the table. Instead, I got bleach fumes and a folding chair. The reception rolled on while I sat in the back hallway sipping lukewarm Diet Coke from a plastic cup a server had handed me with a half-sympathetic smile. She didn't say much, just glanced at my name-tag-less place card, which had never been printed, and offered me an extra roll from the bread basket. Through the crack in the swinging door, I watched her parents give speeches. Her father stood like a politician, voice booming with self-satisfaction. "We're just so proud to welcome Michael into our family," he said. "He's a son to us already." And the guests clapped, oblivious to the fact that the woman who had made that man, the very boy they were cheering, wasn't even allowed in the room. I wasn't angry then, not yet. I was suspended. That strange state between heartbreak and disbelief where you think, maybe this isn't real, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. But then Emily looked toward the kitchen. She knew where I was, knew I could see her, and she raised her glass anyway, smiled. That was when I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I wasn't welcome, not as a mother, not as a woman who had emptied her savings, not as anything. The house they now lived in, the one I helped them buy, flashed into my mind. The way Emily had insisted on a custom backsplash, how she rolled her eyes when I asked about resale value. "We're not flippers, Margaret. We're building our forever." Forever, it seemed, had no space for the woman who built the past. I had signed the title. My name wasn't on the deed, but it was written into every inch of that house in ways none of their guests would ever see. The entry rug I bought when they moved in. The couch delivered while they were on vacation. The contractor I'd called when the water heater failed and she couldn't deal with it right now. And now they had shoved me out of the picture entirely. The band played something jazzy. Laughter rose and fell like waves crashing on a shore I would never reach. A waiter pushed past with a tray of champagne flutes. None for me. Not even a toast in my name. I checked my phone. 1 bar. No messages. Of course not. Michael hadn't called me Mom in weeks. It was always Margaret now. Casual, distant, like a placeholder he meant to fix later. A bubble of something started to rise in me. Not rage, not yet. It was more ancient than that, something heavy and hot and primal. A reckoning. I stood up, knees cracking slightly, and walked to the back exit. The air outside was cold. crisp. The sky beginning to darken into that dusky blue that makes silhouettes out of people. I turned my phone over in my hand. No one noticed I was gone. That's when I remembered. The mortgage papers were still in my name. Not on the deed, but the loan. The financial guarantee. That was mine. And I had choices. Choices they hadn't considered when they decided to treat me like the help. My heels clicked softly against the sidewalk as I walked away from the reception hall, each step lighter than the one before. Let the music play. Let the wine flow. Let them laugh. They'd be sobering up soon. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. The hotel bed was stiff, the pillows too soft. I lay there in my dress, wrinkled now, makeup smudged, body humming with something electric and cold. My mind kept returning to the chair in the kitchen, to her face, smug and unbothered, to the way my son never looked for me. The silence in that room pressed against my chest like a weight. At some point, around 3 or 4 in the morning, I kicked off my shoes, peeled off the dress, and stood in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked older than I remembered, not just in years, but in spirit. Like something inside me had been cracked, and the crack had spread without me noticing. Hair flattened on one side, lipstick worn away, mascara pooled under my eyes. I looked like a woman who'd been asked to disappear and obeyed until now. I wrapped myself in the thin hotel robe and opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, not exactly, but I needed to see it. I needed to pull up the documents, the digital paper trail of the home I had helped secure, the money I had wired, the signature I had given that made their dreams possible. And there it was, the house. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Brick front, quiet cul-de-sac, walkable to schools. Emily's dream. And my name still right there. Not on the deed, no, she had insisted on that, but on the mortgage guarantee, the co-signer, the fallback, the safety net. I laughed, just once. Quiet, sharp. A sound that didn't feel like mine. I opened the emails next. Over a year's worth of correspondence with brokers, contractors, inspectors. I'd been the one who called when the roof needed reviewing. I'd driven out to meet the plumber when the dishwasher leaked. They were too busy with wedding planning. Funny how I was always needed until I wasn't. There was an email from the mortgage agent, a gentle reminder about a refinancing option should I ever choose to pull back from the guarantee. A little-known clause buried in legal language no one ever reads, unless they're angry, unless they're awake at 4 a.m., nursing humiliation like a wound that won't clot. I made coffee. Strong. Bitter. Let it sit on the windowsill until it cooled enough to drink in gulps. When the sun came up, I was dressed. Jeans, flats, a sweater I hadn't worn since before the engagement. I gathered my things. Packed carefully, deliberately. As I zipped the suitcase, I noticed a single tulip had been left on the desk by hotel housekeeping. "Welcome, wedding guest," the tag read. I tossed it in the trash. The drive home was quiet. 1 hour, maybe less. Just long enough to replay every moment in my head, again and again. The way Michael had hugged her mother. The way he stood smiling with her father for pictures. The way no one asked where I was. Not even once. When I pulled into my driveway, the garden was blooming. Roses I planted last spring stretched up toward the light, bold and bright. Life goes on even when it shouldn't, even when something inside you has stopped altogether. I didn't go inside right away. I just sat in the car, engine ticking softly as it cooled. My phone buzzed on the seat next to me. Emily. Emily. Thank you again for helping make our day so special. Everything was perfect. Perfect. That word slid under my skin like a splinter. I didn't respond. I didn't even open the message fully. I just stared at it, then powered off the phone entirely. I didn't want their perfect. I wanted my dignity back. When I finally stepped into the house, it was quiet, familiar, mine. I went straight to the kitchen, set my bag on the floor, and pulled out the folder. The red one. The one where I kept every important document I didn't trust to the cloud. I found the mortgage paperwork, highlighted the clause, reread it 3 times, Then I called my lawyer. Not a dramatic move, not loud, just calm, clear. I'd like to remove myself as a guarantor on a home loan. Yes, I'm aware it'll trigger a refinancing. Yes, I understand the timeline. Yes, I'd like to proceed. He asked why. I paused. Then I said, because I'm done being invisible, and they need to learn what it means when the invisible woman walks away. That night, I poured a glass of wine. Real wine. The good kind. Sat on the porch and watched the sky fade into stars. I felt no guilt, no fear, just stillness. And in that stillness, power. They wanted a forever home. Let them fight for it. By Monday morning, the requests had already started. A few texts, a voicemail from Michael, nothing that sounded like alarm. Yet. Just the usual tones of someone who hadn't quite realized the storm had already broken. Hey, Mom, just checking in. We're back from the brunch now. Emily says thanks again for everything. It was all really elevated. That word again. Elevated. Her favorite. She said it every time she wanted something more expensive, more impressive. The invitations needed to be elevated. The venue should feel elevated. Even the napkins. Could we find something a bit more elevated than basic ivory? But when it came time to elevate me, I was a line item crossed out quietly. No speech for Margaret, it'll feel redundant. We don't need a mother-son dance, it might be awkward. Photos with the immediate family only. The irony of that phrase. I sat in the study with the house file open in front of me. My attorney had already submitted the notice to the mortgage company. The ball was rolling now, slow and inevitable. If they didn't refinance in 60 days, the loan would default. It was a quiet kind of consequence, the kind that leaves no fingerprints, just the echo of footsteps walking away. I picked up a pen, scribbled a few notes, then opened the gift registry. They'd left it public. Careless. I clicked through it slowly. Each item another little slap. A $300 knife block. Crystal wine decanters. Egyptian cotton towels with their initials embroidered like a royal crest. Most of the big-ticket items had already been purchased. By me, of course. The espresso machine, the air fryer bundle set. The custom headboard. I remembered the emails. Emily loves this design. Would it be okay if we put your name on this one? At the time, I said yes, because saying no felt like betrayal. Now, I understood something else entirely. I had been sponsoring my own exclusion. The final insult? A welcome mat. Slate gray with "The Halsteads Established." 2025 written in cursive. Not a mention of where they came from, who helped them get there, who they left behind. I checked the invoice. I had bought that one too. Later that afternoon, I drove into town. Small errands, nothing special, groceries, a return at the post office, a stop at the florist. The same woman who had done the centerpieces for the wedding greeted me with a bright smile. "Mrs. Kellerman, I was just about to call. We still have your account on file from the wedding." I looked at her evenly. "You won't need it anymore." She blinked. "Oh, is everything okay?" "It's better than okay," I said. "It's finished." I bought myself flowers. Not roses. Emily always said roses were too obvious. No, I picked out a messy, defiant bouquet of wildflowers. Sunflowers? Eucalyptus? Something with a name I didn't know but liked the smell of. When I got home, I didn't check my phone. I poured a cup of tea and sat at the dining table, staring at the chair across from me. The one Michael used to sit in when he still lived here, when he'd shovel cereal into his mouth before school and leave the milk carton out every time. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who had everything handed to him and called it earned. I stood, walked to the hallway closet and pulled out the box labeled "Wedding." Inside were swatches of fabric, copies of contracts, receipts tucked into paper clips, a carefully folded copy of their wedding program. Now I noticed what I had missed before, what I hadn't let myself see. Her parents were listed on the inside cover, with gratitude to the Halsteads. And under Michael's name, nothing. No mention of me. I laughed, short. bitter. I pulled out the program, walked it calmly to the kitchen, and slid it into the trash. Then the receipts, one by one. Catering deposit, lighting design, cake tasting. Gone. Not in anger, just in clarity. They didn't want me in the picture. So I removed myself. Deliberately. Elegantly. And with each piece of paper I let go of, I felt a little lighter. It wasn't vengeance. It was subtraction. Let them feel the space I used to fill. Let them hear the echo where my voice used to be. Let them try to furnish a house when the foundation starts to crack beneath them. I had been the beams, the nails, the damn drywall, and they thought they could toss me in the kitchen like a hired hand. The mat outside their door said, "Established. 2025. But they forgot who paid for the key. The messages kept coming. First it was casual, then confused, then tight and clipped, like someone starting to feel the ground shift beneath their feet. Michael. Hey Mom, we saw something about a change with the loan paperwork. Can you call me? I didn't. Emily. Hi Margaret, not sure what's going on with the house stuff, but just FYI, we've already moved in. Let me know if you need anything from us. What I needed was dignity. What I got was emoji hearts and exclamation points, as if kindness could smother a crime, as if politeness could undo the way they placed me beside a mop bucket, while strangers toasted my bank account. I let their words sit there, unopened. They weren't apologies. They were preemptive shields, the kind of language people use when they feel a storm and want to pretend it's just wind. I knew storms. I had lived through more than one. I had scrubbed floors while sick so Michael could have birthday parties. I had pawned my engagement ring to fix the radiator in our first apartment. I had worked double shifts in sneakers with holes in the soles, so he'd never feel like the poor kid at school. I had folded my own dreams into the corners of his like laundry too worn to wear in public. And now they wanted me to pretend none of it mattered. To show up, smile, disappear. That's what Emily really wanted. A sponsor, not a mother-in-law. A benefactor who could be politely ignored once the wire transfer cleared. She'd misjudged me. The woman they exiled to the kitchen was not the kind who forgets what she's owed. I spent that evening going through my files again, not wedding-related this time, mine. I dusted off old notebooks, pulled out plans I'd shelved, dreams I had filed under someday. Travel brochures from 10 years ago, a course catalog from a local college, a folder full of hand-drawn sketches I'd done when I thought I'd be an interior designer before I became a single mother instead. I wasn't trying to escape. I was taking inventory. I had given them the kind of support people build legacies on, and they'd used it to build a cage and ask me to sit quietly in the dark. But I still had the keys. The next morning I called the mortgage office myself, asked for a progress update. They haven't responded yet, the rep said. There's still time, but if they don't refinance, the risk of default. I'm aware, I said, calm, even. There was a time when I would have stepped in, fixed it for them, rushed to protect my son from consequences, shielded him from the hard edges of real life. That time had passed. Let them sit in their own discomfort for once. Let them scramble. Let them learn what it feels like when the foundation starts to shift and no one offers to hold it up. By Wednesday, the tone changed. Michael. Mom, please call. We need to talk. Need. That word always had sharp teeth when it came from his mouth. It was the word that followed scraped knees and late-night breakdowns and college tuition deadlines. I had always answered it like a summons. Always rushed in. Cape invisible but flapping nonetheless. Not this time. This time, I left the cape on the hook. Instead, I cleaned out my closet, donated the dresses I bought for bridal showers I was never invited to, tossed the shoes I wore to the wedding, the ones that bit into my heels while I watched my son dance with another woman's gratitude stitched into his lapel. By the end of the day, the house felt different, not emptier, cleaner, honest. And still, I said nothing. Because sometimes silence is louder than any scream. Sometimes the absence is the punishment. Sometimes the best thing you can give someone who treated you like a transaction is the opportunity to experience the cost. Emily had once said she wanted the wedding to feel like a magazine spread. She'd get her headline, just not the one she expected. Saturday came, and with it, quiet. No more texts, no calls, not even a vague, chirpy message from Emily pretending not to notice the silence. The air had shifted. They'd stopped performing concern and started realizing something else. This wasn't just a moment. It was a reckoning. The woman they thought would always say yes had finally said nothing, and that nothing was deafening. I woke early, not out of nerves. There was nothing left to worry about. I just felt awake in a way I hadn't in years, like a fog had finally lifted. In the kitchen, I set out ingredients, not for a party, not for anyone else, just for me: garlic, olive oil, lemons. I put on the playlist I used to listen to when I cooked for Michael as a boy: Stevie Wonder, Norah Jones, a little Etta James. My hands moved with memory, but not sadness, just ease. I wasn't feeding anyone's expectations today. I was feeding myself. By noon, the table was set. Blue linens, the good plates. I lit a candle. One of the ones I used to save for holidays, for special company. I realized I was that company now. No folding chairs, no backup napkins, no corner seating. Just one place. Mine. Then I sent out 3 texts, not to them. To Claire from the hospital where I used to work. To Mrs. Ellis from down the street, who once brought me soup when I had the flu and no one to call. And to Dina from the bookstore, who always remembered my name and asked about my week like it mattered. Dinner tonight. Casual. Nothing fancy, just food and a few stories. Come if you're free. No RSVP required. Within minutes, they all responded. 3 yeses. Simple, eager, warm. I didn't even have to explain. Because real people don't need long apologies for being seen. By 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. One after the other, they came in holding bottles of wine, bread wrapped in tea towels, Tupperware of roasted vegetables. No expectations, no questions, just presence. We sat, we ate, we laughed. The room filled with voices that didn't demand, didn't measure, didn't pretend. No one asked me if I was okay because they didn't need to. They just made space for me to exist as I was. Between the clink of cutlery and the comfort of unforced conversation, I realized I hadn't smiled like this in months. Not the polite kind, not the one you paste on in wedding photos where your name has been edited out of the caption. A real smile, the kind that pushes up your cheeks and softens your shoulders. After dessert, peach cobbler I made from memory, not recipe, Claire raised her glass. To Margaret, she said, for making space at her own table, for reminding us that being included doesn't mean being silent. They clinked glasses, and I did too. No one asked what brought it on. No one poked at the wound. They didn't need the gossip to make the evening worth it. They just sat with me like I was whole already. That night, after they'd all gone, I stood at the kitchen sink rinsing dishes, humming along to the last few notes of a Billie Holiday song, and realized something strange. I felt full. Not from the food, not from the wine, from choosing myself. That fullness stayed with me as I climbed into bed. No late-night scroll through texts, no wondering what they were saying in group chats, or if Emily had spun the story in her favor. I didn't care. Let them paint me as the villain if it helped them sleep. Let them whisper. Let them guess. I had already written the ending to their version of my story, and it didn't include my apology, just the quiet sound of a door closing, followed by a lock that turned. It arrived on a Monday. Not early, not late, just one of those afternoons where the wind feels sharp even without the cold, and the light comes in sideways through the blinds. A text again. But this time, it was different. No emojis, no exclamation points, just words that tried to reach. Michael. I think we need to talk. I'm sorry if we hurt you. I didn't realize how much until now. If. That tiny word. Always hanging like a noose over every apology that isn't really one. I'm sorry if you felt. Not we did wrong, just you took it that way. I didn't respond. Not right away. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim. Then I set the phone down and made tea. Jasmine. A small indulgence I used to save for guests. Now I brewed it just for myself, in the good cup, the porcelain one with the blue rim I had once hidden away for fear of chips and clumsy hands. I took the cup to the living room. The walls were bare now, where photos had once lived. No more framed memories of birthdays, graduations, holidays where I played the cook, the cleaner, the quiet shadow. I'd packed those images away, not out of bitterness, just clarity. If he wanted to talk, it would have to be different this time. No rehearsed excuses, no Emily in the background feeding him lines. No, we didn't mean to, just truth or nothing. Later that day, the doorbell rang. I knew it was him before I even checked the window. The stance was the same, even if the boy was gone. Shoulders slightly hunched, hands shoved in pockets, waiting like he used to when he broke something as a child and wasn't sure if he'd be forgiven. I opened the door. Slowly. He looked older. Or maybe I did. Maybe we both did. "Hey," he said. I said nothing, just stepped aside. He walked in, looked around. The silence weighed heavy between us. His eyes flicked to the empty mantel, the cleared walls. He noticed. "I guess I deserve that," he said, trying to sound casual. Still, I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear what he'd say when no one filled the silence for him. Finally, he sat. "I didn't realize what it felt like for you," he said, "at the wedding." My eyebrows raised. A small reaction, but enough. I mean, I thought Emily had it handled. She told me the seating thing was about photos and... I raised a hand, a small, simple gesture. "Stop," I said. "Don't hand me the story she gave you. Tell me what you saw." He paused, swallowed. "I saw you by the kitchen. I remember, and I thought, just for a second, I thought maybe you were okay with it. Maybe you just didn't want to be in the way." I smiled, but not kindly. "That's the version you told yourself so you could feel better." He nodded, ashamed. "Yeah." "And when you thanked everyone during the speeches?" I asked, voice steady. "When you toasted her family like they raised you? Did it ever cross your mind who actually did?" He looked down. "You didn't mention me. Not once," I said. "Not when I gave you the down payment. Not when I paid for your suit. Not even when I was the reason the music kept playing and the guests kept drinking." "I know," he said. "I screwed up." "Screwing up is forgetting an anniversary," I said. "What you did was forget who made you possible." His eyes were glassy now. Not quite tears, not yet. Just the burn of truth pressing against pride. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "Not if, just sorry." I sat back, folded my hands in my lap. "I believe that you are," I said. "But that doesn't mean everything gets undone." He blinked. "You're still pulling out of the loan?" "Yes." "What are we supposed to do?" "You're supposed to figure it out. Like I did, every year, every unpaid bill, every night you had a fever and no one else showed up." He sat with that. We sat for a long time. Finally, he said, "Do you still want me in your life?" It wasn't pleading, just unsure. I stood, walked to the mantel, and picked up a photo frame, the one that used to hold his graduation picture. I turned it around. Empty now. "I want to know who you are," I said. "Not who Emily needs you to be, not who I remember. If you figure that out and want to come back as that man, then we can talk." He stood too, quiet, tired, older somehow. "I'll try," he said. I nodded once. Then I opened the door. He stepped out, hands still in his pockets. I closed it behind him, not slamming, just closing and locking. The letter came a week later. Not from him. He knew better now than to send platitudes. It was from their mortgage broker. Plain envelope, formal return address. Inside, a polite, lawyered-up request for reconsideration. It included updated income statements, a proposal to refinance without my removal, and a note about potential undue burden. Undue burden. I read that phrase 3 times, then set the paper down and walked into the kitchen. Poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. I didn't scream, didn't laugh, just stared out the window, watching wind pull at the yellowing leaves in the backyard. They were scared. That's what this was. Not repentance, not respect. Fear wrapped in business language. They weren't asking me to reconsider because they understood what they had done. They were asking because the math no longer worked without me. The dream home, as Emily called it, had been built on a fragile equation. Their combined incomes, her Pinterest-perfect renovations, and my quiet, unquestioned backing. They had forgotten that silence wasn't the same as weakness. I walked back to the table, flipped to the final page of the letter. Please respond within 10 business days to avoid escalated action or default risk. Default, a word that makes banks nervous and people humble, but not me, not anymore. I knew something they didn't. That house was never theirs, not really. It had been borrowed on the back of my history, my sacrifice, my name. And what they owed me wasn't just financial, it was spiritual, emotional, maternal. The kind of debt that no wire transfer could cover. Still, I took the high road. I called my lawyer, told him to reply with clarity. No reinstatement, no extension. I am exercising my right to withdraw. They may refinance or forfeit. It's not my burden anymore. I didn't sign with anger. I signed with peace. Because I had learned something powerful in that quiet house of mine. You don't have to be vindictive to be free. You just have to stop paying for your own erasure. That afternoon, I went into the spare room. Once Michael's, now mine. My space. Light blue curtains, a soft chair by the window, shelves filled with books I'd always meant to read. I pulled one down. Nothing fancy, just a novel I'd picked up at a secondhand shop years ago. I settled into the chair and read the first chapter aloud to myself. My own voice in my own space for no one's approval, no doorbell, no calls, just the hum of a home that belonged to me again. I had spent so many years as the undercurrent, the backdrop, the machine that ran smoothly enough no one noticed until it sputtered. And when it finally did, their panic said everything. Emily hadn't messaged since the visit, not a word. I imagined her, storming around that open-concept kitchen, voice rising like steam off a cracked stove, blaming Michael, blaming me, blaming the mortgage company. That's what people like her do. They blame systems. They blame tone. They never look at the mirror. But I was done carrying their reflection. Later that week, I got another call from the lawyer. They're trying to secure a co-signer. Her father, maybe. Not sure yet. But they're short. I smiled, soft and brief. They should be. Let them sell the custom headboard. Let them cut the cocktail subscription service Emily had insisted on. Let them stare at the empty dining room table, where no one was left to foot the bill. Debt comes in many forms. Some of it is owed in money, some in memory, and some in moments like these, where the people who took you for granted finally realize you were the foundation, not the furniture. I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. And I had it now. In the stillness of my living room, in the taste of tea brewed for one, in the slow, sweet unfolding of a life no longer waiting to be invited in. They had made their home. Now they'd learn how to pay for it. The silence stretched longer than I expected, and I let it. No new messages, no knocks at my door. Not even a passive-aggressive card in the mail pretending to bridge the chasm they'd carved with their indifference. I didn't miss it. In fact, the stillness was a gift. There is a kind of peace that only comes after the storm has flattened everything that no longer served you. When there's nothing left to repair. When the rubble is theirs to clean, not yours. They didn't show up at my door again. Not Michael, not Emily. I imagined he tried once or twice, maybe stood outside the gate with his hands in his pockets, trying to find the version of me that would have opened the door no matter what. But she didn't live here anymore, and I didn't hang up a wreath for welcome. I didn't wait by the window, because this house, my house, had become mine in more ways than a deed could show. I was back to painting, Watercolors mostly, sometimes oils when the mood hit. The same dining table I once cleared for wedding planning was now cluttered with brushes, paper, and tiny vials of pigment. I painted things I hadn't seen in years, places I imagined more than remembered: a small house with shutters, a garden, a woman sitting by herself, sipping something warm, at peace. That woman wasn't sad. She wasn't lonely. She was full. One afternoon, I ran into Diane, my cousin, at the grocery store. She hesitated when she saw me gripping a bunch of parsley like it might save her. "Margaret," she said, too loud, too cheerful. "How are you?" "Good," I replied simply. Not bitter, not kind, just true. "I didn't know all of that happened at the wedding," she added, voice lowering. "I thought, well, maybe you left early." I looked her in the eye. "I was asked to sit in the kitchen," I said, "so I left before I forgot who I was." She flushed. "I should have said something." "You didn't," I said. Then gently, "But that's on you." She nodded, small, ashamed, and let me walk away without pressing it further. That was growth, for both of us. When I got home, there was a letter on my porch, handwritten, from Michael. I brought it inside, held it in my hands, didn't open it right away. Instead, I set it down on the table beside a cup of tea and finished folding laundry. That's what healing looks like. Not ignoring pain, but letting it wait its turn. Later, I slit the envelope carefully and unfolded the pages. He wrote about the wedding, about the house, about how hard things had been since, how they were trying to refinance, but Emily's father had refused to co-sign, how she was blaming him for the fallout, how he'd been staying at a friend's place for a few nights to clear his head. He said he saw now what he didn't before. He said, "I treated your love like it was owed." He said, "I didn't think about the weight you carried because you never made me feel it." He said, "I let her shame you because I thought keeping peace with her was more important than honoring you." It should have felt vindicating. It didn't. It felt late. Not too late to matter, but too late to fix what he broke inside me. At the end, he wrote, "I don't know if you can forgive me. I just wanted you to know I finally see it." That part, at least, was honest. I placed the letter in the drawer next to the others, not out of sentiment, but because it belonged in the archive of a woman who'd loved hard, lost harder, and still chose herself in the end. I didn't write back, not because I wanted to punish him, but because sometimes silence is the only answer that truly tells the truth. He had said what he needed to say, and I had finally stopped waiting to hear it. Spring came early that year. The tulips bloomed before the frost was fully gone, bright little rebellions poking through the hard soil. I stood on my porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching the lights stretch across the lawn like it had somewhere important to be. For the first time in years, I didn't feel behind it. I didn't feel like I was chasing something that kept getting smaller in the distance. I felt caught up, planted, present. The house was quieter these days, but not in a way that ached. The silence had softened. It no longer echoed with the ghost of a son who'd forgotten how to say thank you. It was filled with the hum of radio jazz, the clink of my teacup, the rustle of pages from a book I was reading for no one but myself. I had reclaimed the space they once borrowed, my time, my care, my endless giving, and turned it inward. I bought new curtains, painted the kitchen walls a soft terracotta, not trendy, not elevated, just warm, just mine. I started a little garden in the back. Tomatoes, lavender, and one stubborn row of snapdragons that refused to grow straight. Every morning I'd step outside, check their progress, whisper a little encouragement. I had no one to impress, no party to prepare for, no in-laws to host with tight smiles and polished lies. I was hosting myself. One afternoon I set the table in the dining room, just for me. A real table. No corner chair, no half-serving. I used the good dishes, poured a glass of wine, and plated my dinner like I was expecting company. But I was the company. That's the thing they never tell you when you give your life to someone, your child, your partner, your role. You think they'll look back one day and see the shape of you and all that effort, all that invisible labor. You think the love will anchor them to gratitude. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they grow up and forget the sound of your name when it isn't followed by a request. And when that happens, you have to decide. Do you keep offering the feast, or do you finally sit down and eat? That night, I did just that. Roast chicken with lemon, garlic potatoes, a salad I'd tossed by hand instead of from a bag, candle flickering in the center of the table, a little vase of my own tulips. I raised my glass alone, and I toasted. To me. Not the mother, not the giver, not the afterthought. To the woman who built the house, set the table, bought the food, and still got asked to sit by the kitchen door. To the woman who said yes for 34 years, and then finally, blessedly, said no. To the debt they couldn't repay, because it was never about money. It was about worth. And I had finally paid myself back in full. I never saw the house again. I read in the local paper that it sold below asking. Emily's parents had to step in eventually. They kept it quiet, of course. No Facebook posts this time. No magazine spread photos. Just a quiet little transaction in a market that no longer cared about open floor plans and quartz counters. They moved out 2 weeks later. I never saw a moving truck. Michael sent one last message. "We lost the house. I'm sorry again, but I understand now, I really do." I didn't reply, because understanding is not the same as repairing, and forgiveness isn't an invitation back inside. That's what no one tells them. The ones who think love is a service without a bill, that when the heart finally closes shop, it does so without warning, without noise, just click. Now, when people come over, Claire, Dina, Mrs. Ellis, I pour wine and serve fresh bread. I tell stories about my garden, about the art class I joined, about the book I might finally write. I don't tell them about the kitchen chair, or the wedding, or the loan that nearly swallowed me. Because it's not my story anymore, it's theirs. They can carry it now, heavy as it is. I'm too busy setting my own table, at the head, where I always belonged.